This is Up Close. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. On this week's episode, how economics and finance affect our lives and our country, and how to get more people talking about these numbers. If most of us were asked about the major financial scandals of recent years, we'd point to those that led to the economic downturn of 2008 and 2009. But there's been a boatload of scandals since then, as discussed by Bob Ivry, editor at Bloomberg News, in his book, The Seven Sins of Wall Street. But many times, the discussion of economic and financial problems leads people's eyes to glaze over, thinking they can't understand the numbers in play. But Oakland University professor Barbara Oakley thinks we can learn to do so pretty easily, and explains how, in her book, A Mind for Numbers, how to excel at math and science. And then finally, an interview from some time ago that sheds light on these matters. I go back and forth with Andrew Schiff, a member of a family that has gone to extreme measures to protest the economic structure here in America. He's a co-author on the re-release of a book his father wrote, How the Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. But first, here's my interview with Bob Ivry. Your tone is pretty aggressive, I guess, is the word for it, on what Wall Street is doing now, what Washington is doing now, and where I think most people have a picture in their mind of what Wall Street has done wrong in recent years. They look before the global financial meltdown in 2007, 2008. But what you're documenting here is almost entirely stuff that's gone on since then.
There's plenty of books and plenty of places to go for all the details about what caused the crisis, what might have caused the financial crisis, all the things that happened in 2007 and 2008 when the crisis was going on, even into 2009 when we had started to have the bailouts. What I wanted to do was from 2008 until today, well, I wrote the book last year, so from 2008 until 2013, what has Washington been doing? What's been the repercussions of the financial crisis? And the stuff that I found was frankly disgusting.
When you see all those scandals happen every 6 months or 12 months over, say, the last 6 years, you don't necessarily think there's an overarching single problem here. But you believe there is one.
The overarching single problem, if I could distill 5 years of labor into a couple of sentences, is that the financial crisis left the banks bigger and more powerful than ever. And these are the same banks that got us into trouble in the first place.
Right, and the idea kind of around the 2007, 2008, 2009 government programs regarding the financial industry there was this idea that we were in extremely weak health, and the financial industry was in very weak health. The credit was in very weak health, and cash needed to flow. Mm-hmm. And there was the bank bailouts and TARP. There was the Fed infusion of cash in numerous forms into the financial industry. Right. But what's not really thought of is how, well, once they were back to normal, this gave them much more cash to play with than anybody else.
When we talk about 2008, very rarely do we talk about the years before that and what caused 2008. 2008, yes, we were on the verge of putting our cards into the ATM and not getting any money out. I mean, that's how dire it was. So what caused it? So it was really Washington enabling the banks to do whatever they wanted. And when teenagers are allowed to do whatever they want, they do too much of whatever they want to do.
You speak as a father.
Yeah, I speak as a father of teenagers. The banks behaved like teenagers, and Washington, as the parent, allowed them to.
And now, Barbara Oakley explains how we can all get better at math, even if we don't think so. As someone who's teaching hundreds of thousands of people how to learn, what are other ways that people are trying to incorporate learning into just their everyday lives?
There's often problem solving in any kind of daily endeavor. You've got to figure out your schedule, you got to look at a faucet and see how to fix that faucet. All sorts of different things arise where you want to learn or be able to figure out something new. And so learning techniques for learning these kinds of things can actually help leapfrog your ability to be effective in all sorts of areas of life.
And so what are some of the key tips for getting started?
The first key tip would be to use the Pomodoro technique. And that's simply, Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. And what this technique involves is you just take 25 minutes, set a timer for 25 minutes, and then you sit and focus on something that you want to do. Let's say that it's math homework, and you don't really want to do the math homework. Don't focus on, I'm going to do the math homework, because what that actually does is, research has shown, it activates the pain centers in your brain when you look at something you don't want to do. So instead of saying, this is my math homework and I'm going to use willpower and I'm going to do it, just say, I'm setting the timer for 25 minutes and I'm going to work with focused attention on this thing. I'm not even going to think what it is. And then you trick yourself kind of into doing that.
And a lot of this ties into almost a moral way, a certain moral ideology, a certain moralism of a way of thinking about the idea that there's no quick and easy solution to getting something tomorrow that you want.
One thing that shouldn't be forgotten is it's not like you have to do brute force struggling for 10 hours a day or something. It's kind of learning math or science or truly anything difficult, a new language or a musical instrument. You want to do a little every day. That's the key, is just kind of going a little bit at a time. And you don't want to be constantly exerting willpower. Willpower takes a lot of mental, neural metabolism, actually. It's hard to do, and you can't keep it up all the time. So you just want to have willpower at one specific time. And that is when you look at the thing you don't want to do, and it activates those neural pain centers, that's the only time when you need to use a little bit of willpower and just do something like a Pomodoro that gets your mind off the pain of the task and onto just the flow of doing the work.
And finally, my back and forth with Andrew Schiff about his family's particular view of economics in America. You and your brother, Peter, and your father, Erwin, are pretty public figures in the larger economic debate that's going on in the country. With this, not just with this book, but your brother's been making some videos. You've been quoted in some articles, and your father's been in and out of prison protesting against the federal government's tax policies. And so, what is your goal in trying to spread that message with this book?
Well, you know, my dad's a kind of a very interesting figure, and he's certainly kind of a hero of a lot of people. You could paint him in a lot of different ways, but he's a man of very, very strong convictions, and his driving philosophy has always been a libertarian philosophy, that the best way to bring the most good to the most people is to allow them to pursue their freedom, and that includes both their social freedom and their economic freedom. And he always told me and my brother from a very early age how maximizing freedom and minimizing government interference in the economic marketplace could lift all boats and make the most good for the most people.
Talking about entrepreneurs going out and gathering their own fish and then developing their own means of production and so on and so forth. But the kind of obvious examples given about social safety net programs is that there's a great amount of there's a great amount of risk involved in doing these things, and the social safety net, by and large, smooths out that risk.
But here's what happens when the government gets involved in things. I mean, for instance, healthcare. In the 1920s or 30s, we had healthcare in the system. In this country, healthcare was affordable. I mean, it wasn't as nearly as technologically advanced as it is today, but it consumed a minuscule percentage of our GDP.
Healthcare could barely help you battle an infection.
Well, in the 1920s or 30s, it could. Certainly it could.
Well, polio. You're at the average lifespan in New York City alone in the past 10 years has improved by
actually, the average lifespan of people born in 1930 and today has improved, but not by a dramatic. And if you adjust for socioeconomic conditions, it's not that dramatically different from what it was in 1930. But you could go to the doctor. Doctors made house calls, and they didn't cost a lot of money.
Right. FDR got a house call when he was sick as a child, and he ended up in a wheelchair.
Dragging your sick kid when they're missing school into the doctor was unheard of. Doctors came to you. You go to a doctor today, you walk into their office, you see 10 people before you see the doctor. You see 1 million people filling out forms, and you don't know what he's charging. He doesn't know what he's charging. That's all because of government.
But being able to provide these services and being able to provide something of value is, we're learning more and more to a significant degree, a function of what family you were born to, in what city, in what economic circumstances, with what educational opportunities.
If you're trying to say that that's not fair and that
that's not a question of not fair in the sense that but it's interesting to be on the one hand making a top probably 1.5% salary, and then on the other hand to be suggesting that the real problem in the economy is that there is too much government intervention on behalf of those who make less than 30 grand a year.
Well, look, we have an economy now where you have a federal budget takes about 25% of, if you factor, about 25% of the economy, and about more than half of that is transfer payments. There's also at the same time there are myriads of laws that are designed to protect employees from employers in terms of how you can turn around and sue your employers. They just recently basically made internships illegal. So you can't take an unpaid internship anymore, even if you want to. And as a result, and all these things that the government has done to protect the people at the bottom end of the spectrum from the top has ended up creating a situation where there's no economic growth.
That's all for this week's abbreviated web episode of Up Close. A reminder, you can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish channel on cable, or listen to the full audio of the show as a podcast available on iTunes and your favorite podcast player. The Jewish channel is available on cable, Time Warner Cable Channel 1640, IOPLING Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Cox Cable Channel 1, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and on Comcast on the on-demand menu on premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.